Now, for some reasons, one of the most popular videos on my channel are the videos about the Ukraine, and I spent a significant time of my life in Ukraine. I'm really passionate about the war in Ukraine. If there is something I could do to end it like ASAP, I would do it. Unfortunately, I'm an average guy. I don't really have superpowers, or I'm not a government official. However, I just wanted to give you guys an update. Probably you've heard about it. There was a guy who was a main general in the army. He was a commander-in-chief, I believe that's what they call it in here in the United States, or I might be mistaken. But anyways, the main army guy, and the President Zelensky fired him about 2 or 3 weeks ago. They had an ongoing conflict. He was getting too popular, and Zelensky didn't like him being too popular because there probably would be elections some day, and he doesn't really want someone to compete with him. That was, rumors why he fired them. There was no official reason. He pretty much stated that there was no big difference for last year. They were hoping to gain momentum with attack, gain their lands back, but it never happened. So that was the kind of official reason. However, let's not forget they're fighting Russia. This is like the biggest land-wise country in the world. It used to be like a second probably army in the world. And it's really not easy to fight Russia. Now, personally, I think that was a mistake. He should never have fired that guy. It was Valery Zaluzhny. Once in a lifetime, you get to hear about those type of people. It's not only me, it's mostly army experts that were stating that because of Zaluzhny, Ukrainian army was able to be this successful. And the guy was so honest that he sold his own apartment and donated the money to the army, to the soldiers. I think those guys should not be fired. But anyways, what happened today, I just read in the news. Ukraine started to lose some land. Russia started to attack very heavily. And this all started, I was watching the video of the Tucker Carlson interview with Putin. Personally, I think there were lots of things that he needed to ask and didn't ask. But anyways.
Only in one case, if Poland attacks Russia. Why? Because we have no interest in Poland, Latvia, or anywhere else. Why would we do that? We simply don't have any interest.
Overall, it was like average interview. I don't think that it was something that we're also watching for 2 hours. In Russian, there is a saying that history doesn't like the if or. You can say like 1,000 different ideas. If that would be this, if this would be that, if that guy would be in the power, there would not be a war. But actually, there is a guy in Ukraine, actually the ex-president of Ukraine, Leonid Kuchma. I'm 100% sure if he would be a president, there would not be a war at all. First time when I was in Ukraine, it was 2003, and honestly, I think that was the best time economic-wise that Ukrainian people were living in, because it was super cheap, the salaries were high, everything was affordable, the quality of life wasn't bad. I mean, it wasn't like crazy nice, but it wasn't bad. And it was Leonid Kuchma. If you guys didn't know, he used to be a president. He served 2 terms. Most Ukrainians don't like him, but I think he is a guy that could stop the war. Maybe he actually, I think one of the friends offered him to him. I believe it's one of the famous journalists in Ukraine offered him, why would you not go for the presidency for 1-year term? After you would stop the war, you would just resign. And he said, I'm too old. Like, he's in his 80s, I believe. I think he's an honest guy. Obviously, he's not perfect. We all know that Eastern Europe, it was used to be, and it still is, probably one of the most corrupt places on earth. It's not as bad as other countries, but compared to Western Europe or United States, it's still a higher corruption there. I like how Andrew Tate was talking about that. I mean, if the cop stops you here in the United States, you can do pretty much nothing. I mean, you will get the ticket, you have to pay it. In most of the Eastern European countries, you can bargain, get a good deal, probably just pay a bribe, and the cop will let you go. So it's kind of affordable corruption, as opposed to lobbyists buying politicians here. It's still a corruption, but it's not affordable for average Joe. So that's the thing is with Eastern Europe. And during the reign of Kuchma, there was a corruption, okay, but people were living really nice. There was no war. Actually, I remember there was some conflict. I'm not sure about the name of the place, but Russia was trying to somehow assume the land that was in Ukraine's hands to be theirs. And the guy was somewhere in South America. He canceled his trip, fled immediately, talks, and stopped everything. I mean, that guy was serious. Now, most of Ukrainians don't like him because of, corruption. He had his son-in-law as one of the richest men in Ukraine, Pinchuk. But like, come on, like guys, like obviously if the president's son-in-law is a businessman, he would be successful. No one would want to be an enemy of the son-in-law of the president. I mean, I don't know, like after that they had couple presidents that were not really good. I think all the trouble started because during the history, Ukraine was divided into two parts most of the time. The eastern part was more leaning towards Russia. The western part was leaning towards more Europe. But eventually, as the time passed, Ukraine gained independence. People started to see themselves as an European nation. That was actually one of the slogans that Yushchenko, the next president, used to become a president in his electoral campaign, stating that Ukraine is a European state, which is, I mean, obvious. It was a big deal back in the day because people were not sure if they want to go back cooperation with Russia. One of the reasons that the whole confrontation with Russia started, I think he admitted actually in one of his interviews, was allowing the Yanukovych to become a president. So the Yanukovych was a guy who was supposed to be president, but there was a revolution. The Yushchenko became the president. But eventually, as the time passed, Yanukovych was able to become a prime minister first and then become a president. Now, I think that was really tragedy for the Ukraine because Yanukovych was a guy who was jailed twice, and one time, I believe, the rumor says it, he was jailed for the sexual assault. Obviously, the guy like this should not be, let alone the presidency, should not be even close to the parliament or somehow represent anybody. Now, the problematic region that the whole thing started around was Donetsk. Yanukovych was originally from Donetsk. And back in the day, Donetsk was famous for its crime scene. I mean, I visited Donetsk a couple times back when I believe Yushchenko was a president, and personally, I didn't see any crime. It was actually very legitimate, clean, one of the cleanest cities I've ever visited. You know, industrialized. It used to be one of the biggest industrial bases of Eastern Europe. They actually, I believe, they had the biggest steel manufacturing plant there. Probably not anymore. But anyways, that was the background that Yanukovych was coming from. And he ended up just running away. When the war started, then Russia attacked. That was the reason the whole mess started. To be honest, I don't think that Kuchma would be able to stop the war. I don't really see that happening. Maybe, maybe not. But if he would be a president at the time when the war started, it would never start. It's not about even him. Putin respected Kuchma and he was kind of watching out for him. I mean, first of all, Kuchma was a president when Putin became president. He used to already be a president. Putin was trying to somehow pay respect, maybe, if you can say so. And the other thing is, I think that the democracy in those early nations, like Ukraine, like all ex-Soviet countries in Georgia, has its own problems. Like there's a country called Georgia. There was a president, Mikhail Saakashvili. I mean, Georgia was one of the worst countries amongst all ex-Soviet countries. It used to be like highest crime. Literally every street you would walk, there would be a crime boss standing there collecting money. It was horrible. And the guy who I just mentioned, Mikhail Saakashvili, he made like revolutionary reforms. He turned Georgia to one of the most fastest developing countries in the world. You would literally feel yourself like in part of Western Europe right now if you would go to Georgia. He ended up in jail. I mean, I don't really think that average person is making the best decisions for themselves political wise, especially in those countries like that. Now, issue in Ukraine was that, and actually I think that Putin mentioned it, was an interview to Tucker Carlson. Of course, it was just much more than it is in real life. And I'm talking about the national issue. Putin was saying that there are like a huge bunch of nationalists and fascists in Ukraine. I mean, there are weird people everywhere. Come on, like it's not that the reason of the war. I think the reason of the war was completely different reason. My main issue was economic issue. However, and I'm not trying to lose my thought here, this video is still about the Ukrainian president that could stop a war. But overall, the countries that are gaining independence in their first 10, 15, 20 years, they don't really have those traditional democratic institutions formed. So it's kind of really risky to have different guys, random guys coming and being elected for the role of the president. You might have a neighbor like Russia and they can attack you. And this has happened to Georgia too. So what I'm trying to say is, I think, unfortunately, the situation is not really looking good for Ukraine. And personally, I think they should just stop the war. Someday, somehow, they will get a momentum, get their land back. But now the best thing will be stop the war, stop the killing, because the situation is really getting out of control. Like, I have lots of friends who were really patriotic at the start. They are not anymore. I mean, many people wants to leave. Obviously, no one wants to die. Losses that Ukraine is paying right now, I've heard that there are like the buildings, the big towers that literally every man died in. Only the children and ladies are left alive. So it will take time to create a new generation. It will take energy. It will, I mean, human life is so valuable, guys, and I'm getting emotional. I'm sorry. Probably, I just want this war to end. Hope it will end very soon. Let's pray for it to end and innocent people stop dying. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching. See you on the next one. Bye.